Morning, readers. I am author and educator Frank Morelli, back for another day of pandemic mania, and we're here all at home just trying to get through the days together and learn a little bit. I realized that in my last book talk, I promised that I was going to answer a Q&A style question and never got to it. And interesting part is that people have actually been responding uh, to my information up here. I mentioned that if anybody wanted to reach out, get in touch with some ideas or some questions that they may have had, or they needed help with anything, that they could reach me at my website address, frankmorellywrites.com, or by DMing or PMing me on Twitter or Instagram. On Twitter, I am at FrankMoWriter, and on Instagram, I am at FrankMorelliAuthor. So I started to get some mail from people, some email from people that were asking me questions. I reached back out to them and was able to help them out. But the most important thing to me was that I had started to receive some questions from readers out there and from kids. And I thought, it would be kind of cool to pick a few of these questions maybe once a week and come on here and just answer them. So here is our first installment of Author Q&A with Frank Morelli. It's a very high-tech, moment that you're seeing here. You can see that I'm cordoned off here between my fish tank and my kitchen with this weird thing on the wall. I have my books up here. It's getting really, technologically sound, I have to tell you. But I received a lot of questions. Like I said, for this week, I decided to choose 5 of them, and from people all over the place, all over the country, and to kind of just read them out and then give my responses. Just while you're at it, and if you're looking for any books to read, don't forget, if you are in 4th to 7th grade or you're a middle school student, this series, pretty awesome and entertaining. Please Return to Norbert M. Finkelstein is book 1, and due out on March 27th, the second book in the series, Please Return to Toby Solano, both available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, simply by searching my name, Frank Morelli, in the search bar. Again, make sure you spell my name correctly, Morelli. And then also, don't forget, if you are if you're interested in young adult literature, you're in high school, or if you're an adult and you want to kind of read some YA that will appeal to you, No Sad Songs came out in 2018, but it's also available in all the same places. You can find more information about all of them on my website. So to get to the Q&A part of the game here, first question that I chose that was from Kelly with an I in West Covina, California. And she asked, how did your background lead you to become an author? That's a good question. Well, first of all, I'll start with this. I firmly am a person who believes that everything you do in life adds up, and you don't do things for no reason. Even if it feels like it's for no reason when you're doing it, there's probably, the universe is sending you a message. It's giving you something to do that will come up big in your future. For me, one of the biggest things I ever did, it was also one of the smallest things I ever did, and that was sitting in my room when I was a kid, like 8 or 9 years old, and writing. I used to love playing video games. I still kind of do, even though I'm kind of old to play video games, but I still play them. But when I was 8 or 9 years old, playing on the original Nintendo game system, I wasn't really all that happy with the games themselves. I thought that they could have gone further and there could have been, more storyline involved. I was 8 and 9 years old, didn't realize that technology hadn't caught up to our ability to tell stories, because when you see some of the games that are out there now, it's like, wow. But back then, what I used to do was go up in my room after I had played a game that had left something to desire for me, and I would kind of rewrite the storylines, or I would add parts to it, like kind of spin-off characters or different levels or worlds that you should have been able to go to. None of these things were ever going to get published, or in fact, I never even let anybody else read them. And I would store them in this little like piggy bank that I had on my desk that literally to this day has never had any money in it, and only writing. So I guess even back then I kind of knew what it was that I wanted to do without actually knowing it. So I feel like that experience of being of isolating myself and sitting down and getting my butt in the chair and writing when I was 8 and 9 years old is still the same thing I do today. I hopefully write better things than I did then. All the stories that I'm writing now are all original instead of being based off of somebody else's work. But it was a start. But that's one of the main things. That's something that helped me to realize, and especially as I look back, that being a writer and an author was what I wanted to do. In addition to that, like some more real world stuff that actually helped me get to where I am. When I got into college as a pre-med major and decided that that wasn't for me, I happened to fall into being an English major, which most people will tell you is a perfect way to be really poor in life. But I loved it. I loved reading. I loved learning about literature. I think it helped me to learn a lot about life. And it also helped me to improve my writing abilities. And, that got me going into the direction of journalism. I worked for a few newspapers and wrote stories and covered sports stories for a local newspaper. And writing journalism is really good training. It allowed me to understand length and size of sentences and also of just entire works, to the point where now, like, if you said write me 500 words, I can sit down, write what I think is 500 words, type it in, and do a word count, and it's like 499 words. So, I mean, like, that's the kind of thing that journalism helped me to learn. Just refining my writing, cutting down on words, being able to just be as effective as possible with a single sentence. And then from there, I went into publishing for a short time, where I was working for an educational publisher doing a lot of editing, which helped me to see other people's writing, and to see areas where they were making not great decisions with their words, and that helped me to learn. And then the final thing was eventually giving in and deciding to be a teacher after watching my mom be a teacher, work in schools for like 30 some years, and not really wanting to have that as my life. I finally gave in and decided that publishing, working, sitting at a desk all day in a cubicle editing somebody else's work was not really what I wanted to do. I decided to become a teacher, and being a teacher has been the greatest thing ever. You would think that being a teacher would bring you away from writing, because there's so many other things that you have to do as a teacher. You're responsible for lots of people on a daily basis, and they're learning. But since I'm a young adult and middle grade author, it gave me the opportunity to kind of observe, to be in that world every single day, and to kind of understand how students and readers of that age think, and that I think that really helps me to write stories. And in addition to having the summer off, where I can actually put together a chunk of time where I can get a sizable amount of work done and have a plan for it. So all of those things kind of added up together. In addition to obviously my coursework in school, I was an English major in my undergrad. I got a degree in education to become a teacher. I have an MFA and a master's of English, which also like really helped me as a reader and as a writer. So all of those things kind of added up, and I think that no matter what you do in life, there's never just like one thing that makes you get to that level. It's always a combination of all the things that you've done. And being a writer, it's all about experience and drawing on your experiences. So being able to have lots of diverse experiences in my life, I think has helped me to get to where I am. Good question. Another question. This one is from Austin in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And Austin asks, what is the most challenging part of being a writer? Wow. I would say there's a couple challenging parts. There's a lot more than a couple challenging parts, but two main parts that I find to be the most challenging that if you ever want to be a writer, you have to really think about. The first one is dealing with rejection. I think being a baseball player my whole life has helped me in that area, because I remember a coach one time telling me, and it's really stuck with me, that being a baseball player is all about being a failure. If you're a failure, you could also be a success. And what I mean by that is, think about a batting average in baseball. If you bat 300 in the major leagues, you're an all-star. You're one of the best players in the league. But that also means that you failed I'm not a math major, you can see. You failed 7 out of 10 times to do that. And that's considered a success. And I feel like writing is very similar. When you finally have something that you feel like is a completed work, and then you start sending it out to people to judge you and to decide whether they want to publish it, you will receive so many rejections that it becomes mind-boggling. Just to give you a little sense of it, No Sad Songs, I lost track of exactly how many rejections I received, but somewhere in the 50 range. Norbert M. Finkelstein didn't get rejected that often just because I simply didn't send it out to too many places and got lucky. And Toby Solano, I never had to send out because it's with my same publisher. But also have done lots of short story and essay writing, and I've come up with kind of like an idea of exactly the percentage of acceptances you'll get versus rejections, and it's really if you're batting 10%, if you get an acceptance from a publisher, from a journal, or from a magazine at a 10% clip, you are on the all-star team of writers. That's pretty hard to do. So I guess what I'm saying is one of the hardest things of writing is being able to effectively deal with rejection, believe in your work, and still move on after somebody tells you that it's just never going to happen. Because so many people told me it was never going to happen with No Sad Songs, and here it is. As an indie book, sold thousands and thousands of copies, way more than I ever expected it would, and my publisher ever thought. On an indie level, did excellently. And like I said in a previous video, in the process of turning it into a movie, things that I never thought would ever happen. And if I would have believed the other 50 people who told me no, and not continue to move on, improve the story, continue sending it out, and have a thick skin, none of that would have happened. And in fact, this book wouldn't have happened, and then this book wouldn't have happened, and then 2 other books that are on the way. So you have to kind of be able to deal with rejection, take the criticism, internalize it, decide what you need to change to improve your work, and then be able to move on and still believe in your work. And then I guess the other thing that's hard about writing, the second thing that takes a little bit of mastery and practice, is being solitary all the time. As a writer, most of the time, other than times when you're out there like touring and talking to readers, which is a small percentage of your time, most of the time you're behind a desk. You're sitting down with your own words and your own thoughts, and you're writing, and there's nobody that's going to sit there and tell you to do it. The only person that is going to tell you to do it is you. So being able to come up with a daily schedule and hold yourself accountable for it, make yourself feel guilty about not meeting deadlines that were self-imposed. All those things are important if you want to be able to get to the next level in writing, because like I said, being able to manage your time, especially for most writers, because most writers don't just come into writing out of the blue. They probably have another job or doing writing as a second job when they get home from their first job, and it's tiring. And I would say over the last 10 years my sleep patterns are absolutely decimated from just putting in long hours and getting what writers say, getting my butt in the seat and making sure that I write my stories. But it's so worth it when I get to the end, all the hours, all the time, the loss of sleep, to be able to hold your book in your hand with your name on the front and other authors, like best-selling authors' blurbs on the front. It's worth it. It never gets old, and you can never replicate that in any other area of life, I don't think. So you can probably take that advice for just about most things in life that you want to accomplish. Okay, let's go to another question. Michaela in Burlington, right here in North Carolina, she asks, what advice do you have for aspiring writers? I think I've given lots of advice already, but the main advice that I will give to aspiring writers, especially if you are a middle schooler, high schooler who wants to be a writer at some point, you write now. Take it seriously regardless of whether anybody else is taking you seriously, because adults are kind of funny like that. They oftentimes look down on children as if the things that they're doing are just cute, like as if they're not serious, they're not important. They're very important. I just told you a story about one of the most important things in my life that added up to me being a writer was when I was 8 and 9 years old writing, video game like remakes in my room, which I have no idea where they are now. They probably are in some landfill. They added up to nothing, but the experience that I gave myself and the drive and the motivation, and I kind of, without realizing, was teaching myself how to create a schedule, how to get my butt in the seat. Those things are important. So take your writing seriously. Don't let anybody tell you that writing's not a serious thing to do or that it won't get you anywhere in life, because there will be people that tell you that. There's still people that tell me that now. Writing can take you as far as you want it to take you, as hard as you want to work. It's gonna be a carrier for you. So I would say get down to writing as often as possible. block the noise out of people around you telling you that, you need to do a job that makes you money, because that's not necessarily the most important thing in life. And if you're doing something that you love, guaranteed down the road it's going to make you money, because you'll have learned everything there is to learn, you'll have mastered it, you'll have become an expert, and people will seek you out for your expertise. So that's my advice to you as an aspiring writer. And just have that thick skin. Don't allow rejections to shut you down. Keep going. One more. I think I have two more questions that I'll answer here. This one here is from Abraham in Reston, Virginia. Abraham asks, do writers make a lot of money? That is a perfect segue from my last answer. It depends. Some writers make huge amounts of money, and they're on the bestseller lists, and they're making millions of dollars. They have their movies out there. There are some writers that are so famous that they make theme parks that are based upon the stories that they've created. I think you know who I'm talking about. But then there's a lot of writers out there who are toiling and who are working second jobs and really, not making a ton of money off their writing, but using it as a supplement. And for those writers, they're probably the most important writers out there. They're the ones that are creating a lot of great work, a lot of the literature that will carry on like down the road. And for many of those writers, myself included, that's one of the main reasons they do it, that money isn't really the object. I mean, it's nice to make money. It's nice to have money in your pocket. It's nice to buy things that you want. But you can't put a price on somebody coming up to you after a book event to tell you that your book made a huge difference in their lives. There's no price tag on that, and it continues to pay. Like when you're having a bad day, you can think about that, and it gets you through. And I think we're realizing right now, in the midst of this pandemic, that money is clearly not the most important thing in the world. Otherwise, we wouldn't just be, closing everything down. We wouldn't be watching the stock market crash on a daily basis. We wouldn't be dipping into, into our treasury and just giving people money to keep their lives afloat. That's because there's so many more important things out there than money. So I would say, yes and no. Writers can make a lot of money. There is the potential out there in the entertainment industry to make oodles of money overnight. One day you're poor, the next day you are loaded. But there's also a lot of potential for you to write a lot of stories and kind of just make supplemental income, or even nothing, other than just people recognizing you as a talent. Which there's a huge value in that as well. Hopefully that answered what you had to ask me. And then the last question I'll ask before I let you go is from Janelle in Clementon, New Jersey. And I picked that question specifically because that is like 5 miles away from my hometown. So cool to see a question sent my way from Janelle, who asks, what is the publishing process all about? That is a very broad and general question. I'll try to go really quickly with it. I'm published through independent presses. I'm not with one of the big 5 publishing houses like HarperCollins and Macmillan and all those, Scholastic and stuff. But the process is pretty similar. Basically, what you do is you submit your work either to an agent or directly to the publisher. And if you get an agent, that agent will bring your work, will showcase your work to bigger publishing houses. When you have interest, or after you sign a contract, then the real work begins. You take your draft that you've given them, and then you go through a rewriting phase, which sounds a lot like what it is. You're not necessarily rewriting every word of the book, but what you're doing is taking a look at the book in a different way, deciding if it could be set up in a different format, and moving information around, deciding if chapters that exist in the current draft don't need to exist in the final draft, changing characters, changing names, having readers that are specifically looking at things in terms of political correctness read through and make sure that you have checked off all the boxes there, and then you go through a couple months of getting editors' notes and going back in and changing things that you've originally written, or trying to argue and reject those changes and argue for the original that you had. Then there's a period of time where you're just deciding upon cover images and ways that you're going to market the book. Lots of authors don't have a major say in what their cover of their book looks like. At an indie press, I had a pretty big say in all the covers for my books, but not the final say. When it comes down to it, the publisher decides what it's going to look like. But with a smaller press, I did have a lot of input, and I would even say that the No Sad Songs cover behind me, I even drew one up that looks similar to that, but I won't draw anything because my drawing skills are not great. My students will tell you. Um, but then after you finally have all that stuff squared away, and you finally have a final draft, then you're sending your book back out to other authors and other review sites so that you can get reviews and endorsements, sending those endorsements out to media organizations so that you can get coverage of your book in the press so that people know it exists. Building websites. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go into it. More things than I could list in a short Q&A session like this. But it's a fun process, I have to say. There's a lot involved, but it's exciting. When I'm in the midst of a publishing, of a book getting ready to come out, it's kind of fun to check your email each day and something new comes across, whether it be like, oh, we're going to do this with the book, or we're changing this element, to, hey, here's an endorsement you received from this particular author. It's just kind of fun and exciting, and I would say that after books come out and after your tour is over, then there's kind of like a dead time where you miss all that stuff. So publishing process is fun. I would encourage young readers and writers out there who are interested in seeing their name on the front of a book to kind of do some research and look into what other authors have said about their process going through publishing. And I would also encourage you to write in general and try to get your name up there in lights, because going through the process has been one of the most enjoyable experiences of my life. So hopefully I was able to answer some of your questions today in Q&A format. Like I said, I only chose 5 of the many that were sent my way. Keep sending them. I will choose some more next week or even in a couple of days, depending on how many I get, and I'll continue trying to answer as many questions as I possibly can. And for teachers and homeschool parents out there wondering whether or not you can use any of my videos, please do use any of this stuff in your class, in your makeshift classroom if you can, if it helps. If it's just good insight into the writer's life, however you want to use it. That's the reason why I'm putting it here. And like I said, visit any of the sites up here if you want to get in touch. And if you have questions, Q&A questions, if you have questions about planning lessons in an asynchronous or synchronous format like online, anything really that you think I can help you with, I would be more than happy to do so in the coming days and months, however long we're in this holding pattern. Hope you have a great day, great rest of your week. Stay healthy, stay safe.